Hi, I'm Ana Sortun from Oleana in Cambridge, and I'm going to show you tomato kibbeh and tomato dolma with our season's tomatoes from the farm. The first step is just taking really great beefsteak, heirloom tomato, whatever looks really juicy. So what I usually do is cut the tomato in half widthwise like this, and you can just pull some seeds out with your fingers like so. You don't have to be too fussy, but you're taking some water, some seeds, just because the seeds are a texture that maybe you do or you do not want. This is not completely necessary, but more desirable. And most of the seeds just pull right out. And then we're going to just take a grater, simple box grater, and we're going to take the big hole side, and we're going to grate the tomato. Until all we have left in our hand is the skin. So what you have left is pretty much the essence of the tomato, the whole inside. To this, we're going to add some spices. We're going to add a little bit of dried cumin, dried ground cumin. Some really wonderful oily, you can see they just stick to my fingers, they're so oily, some Aleppo chilies. These are from Syria, Aleppo, Syria. And we use this for their caramelized, sweet, little bit spicy flavor. And this is something really interesting called, it's a red pepper paste, a Turkish red pepper paste. And this is a traditional condiment used in Turkey and in the Middle East, where they dry the sweet and hot peppers in the sun, and they concentrate the flavors into something really rich. So it's used just like tomato paste would be used. You can find this red pepper paste in a lot of different shops, specialty shops, like markets where they would sell Greek or Armenian groceries. So just a spoonful of this just concentrates the flavor. So we're making a tomato base here. We're going to add some salt. If you can use a spoon, use a whisk. If your pepper paste is very thick, it might need a little whisking to dissolve it. A little bit of olive oil. This is extra virgin olive oil. Then we're going to start adding our vegetables to this, and it's going to look very similar to a gazpacho. So right now we have a lot of peppers. We're using a padron pepper, which is a little bit spicy. You can use just a regular green bell pepper if you don't like the heat, but we've minced it really fine. Added some sweet onion. Right now we've got beautiful sweet onions at the farm. You can use something like a Walla Walla sweet or a Vidalia onion or a red onion, something that is a little milder than just a Spanish white onion or cooking onion, so that you get a lot of sugar concentrate, and it can be eaten raw. And then you're going to just add some red bell peppers, minced red bell peppers as well. You could add, we'll add a little bit of scallion to this. You can add minced fennel, any sort of gazpacho type vegetable to this. Some add cucumbers, but traditionally it's mostly about the peppers and tomatoes. So a little bit of scallion. We're also going to add a little bit of fresh mint to this, and again, this is optional. It's really just sort of what you have from either your garden or what's in season, what you have around. You could use lots of fresh parsley in this, would be perfect. And then we have, again, something that looks very similar to gazpacho. So we really want to get this flavor perfect before we start stirring in the bulgur. Then we're just going to stir in fine bulgur. This is a whole grain, a wheat, ground very fine. Usually when you find it in the stores, it's marked as number 1. And there's 1 through 4 in grinds, and 4th being the coarsest and 1 being the finest. And this is really important because this acts as sort of a thickener, almost like a flour would. It's going to bind this all into something that resembles tabbouleh in a way, but it's very tomatoey in flavor. So we're going to sprinkle in some bulgur and stir it around, and we're just going to let this sit. The bulgur absorbs all the liquid from whatever you have in the base. So this is this completes the kibbeh part. And the next part we do is the dolma part. So we'll just set this aside while we prepare the tomato for the dolma. Okay, so the next step to assembling this dish is making tomato dolma. Now, the word dolma means stuffed, and so it could be a grape leaf, which is the most common dolma that we know. It could be a zucchini, it could be an eggplant, it could be any type of vegetable. So what we're going to do is just take one of these beautiful beefsteak tomatoes, and all I've done is I've made a incision on the top of the tomato with a knife, just sort of an X is all. Not going all the way through the tomato, but just enough to mark it so that I can see the skin when it's ready. This goes into a pot of boiling water, and it just goes in for about 30 seconds. And what you're watching for is for the X that you made for the skin to start pulling away from that X. And it literally takes sometimes less than 30 seconds, more like 15 or 20 seconds. The tomato comes out of the boiling water with a slotted spoon or a pair of tongs. And at that point, the skin is just falling off, basically. So you can just wipe the skin right off. And this just gives it so that you have no tough texture at all, so that when you cut through the tomato, it's nice and soft. So the skin literally pulls right off, and you're left with a perfectly skinned tomato. The tomato hasn't been cooked at all. It's just been put in the hot water long enough to make the skin loose. So essentially that's what we wanted to achieve, not cooking it, but just skinning it. So we're going to cut it in half the opposite way of the way that we grated it, through the middle. We're going to open it up, and we're going to take out some of the inside so that we can stuff it. And this is just, we don't want to remove too much of the good stuff, but we want to try to find the cavity where the seeds live. And this is good stuff, so you don't necessarily have to throw this out. You could just stir this back into your tomato kibbeh part. But essentially we want to create a cavity so that we can stuff it with this really beautiful thick yogurt that's called labne. So we've got a couple of pockets without disrupting the good part of the tomato. We're still left with the good part of the tomato. I'm just going to trim the edge of the core of the tomato, so the whole thing can just be eaten. And we're going to season this tomato with a little bit of salt on the inside before we stuff it. The labne is very thick yogurt that's been strained, and it usually is made with whole milk, and as all good yogurt is, and a lot of that is the texture that it gives by using whole milk. You can buy labne or make labne. It's essentially making yogurt first and then straining it through cheesecloth overnight so that you're left with something that's almost as thick as cheese. It looks almost like mascarpone cheese or sour cream. And this is, but yet it doesn't have the butter fat that those two things do. And then you're just going to take the labne and spoon it into some of the cavities that you've made in the tomato, pushing down so that the labne goes into the tomato, and then sort of smoothing it out like it was frosting. And we're just going to set this aside. The last little thing we want to do is a little bit of, we're going to take the other half, or just a leftover tomato, or the pulp and seeds that you scraped out. It doesn't really matter, but essentially we're making a chopped tomato topping for the tomato kibbeh, which is just really finely, we use the term concassé, which just refers to the fact that we're going to chop it so much that it starts to stick together and forms almost a paste, not quite a puree, a little more coarse than a puree. But you keep chopping the tomato until it's very fine, and it almost comes together with a knife when you fold it on the board. So this is a tomato concassé. So then this tomato concassé just goes into a bowl, And your water, the tomato water sort of stays on the table. We really want the thicker part of it so it's more like a frosting. And then we take our kibbeh part, the bulgur part, which has now gotten nice and thick. And the wonderful thing about this salad is that you can make it really into anything you want. You can make it very spicy. You could put more diced tomatoes in it so it's even more tomatoey. So we just form it into a little, this is just a fancier presentation, but at home you could just spoon it onto the plate, but this just makes it contained so that it looks more kibbeh-like, traditional kibbeh-like. And the tomato that we've just chopped, we're just going to stir in some olive oil, and then we're going to stir a little bit of salt into it and spoon this over the top of the kibbeh part and just let the juices soak into the bulgur. And the next step we like to do is just, these are just some greens. You can use any kind of greens. This is something called purslane, which is one of my favorite things. You usually find it in New England in August. It's a weed. Everyone loves to get rid of it. So if you know any farmers, you can ask them to buy their purslane and they would probably jump for joy because it's very invasive, but it's one of the most heart-healthy greens you can eat. And in our culture, we don't eat a lot of purslane, but in the Middle East, it's found in soups, salads, and is a big part of the diet and is extremely healthy. So this could be arugula, this could be some baby greens, and then we just take our tomato dolma and place it on top. And finish it with a little bit of fleur de sel, which is just going to give some little cracklings of salt into the tomato part of it, and a little more olive oil to be authentically Mediterranean. And this is the tomato kibbeh with the tomato dolma. Perfect light meal or lunch.